So now that we've seen the process for getting new data and how to set up that data so it can be kept in state, let's do it again. Let's now add the ability to get the character's world data and then display that data on screen. So the first thing we need to do is add an action for it. We're going to call it export function, and we're going to call it get character world. Now this one's going to be a little bit different than the other ones, where it's going to, instead of receiving an ID, it's going to instead get a URL, and you'll see why very soon. So now that we have that URL, we're going to have to do some sort of asynchronous work, and I'm sure you already know what this means. It means we have to return a thunk. So we return a function that takes dispatch. We're going to fetch that URL. We're going to do what we always do and get the response into a parsed JSON form. And that will then give us the world. And when we have that world, we just need to dispatch another action that says, hey, we finally have the world data. Let's send it off to the store to get processed through the reducers. And we're going to call that, we're getting super crazy here, we're going to call it set character world, and we're going to pass it to world. So now that we have that, let's create this action. We need to export default, set it, we're going to be past the world. Now we're going to be returning an object like we always do. It's got a type of set character world, and it's going to be past the world. Also remember, we have to actually create this. I like to keep everything together, so we'll create it up top here. Set character world. Now we have this, but you see that we're supposed to pass a URL here. How are we supposed to get the character's data or the character's world data if we have a URL? Where is this URL coming from? The URL actually comes from the character's profile. You may be saying, well, how are we supposed to get their profile? Well, remember, we're getting their profile from the API. We're getting it back here, and then we're setting it in our state. The best place to do this would be in reaction to this coming back. Here we have the profile. So let's dispatch getting the character world, and we're going to pass it profile world. Now profile world is a URL to the character's data. If we hit that URL, it will return a JSON object representing the character's world. And that's exactly what we've done. When we click on a character, it will hit this action. This action will fetch the user's profile data. The fetch will get the character's profile data. Once we have the profile data, we want to set that in our state like we did in the last video, but then we also want to grab the world and we want to go get the data about that world. And so that gets passed on to this, which sets off another request, getting the world's data. And then we set that data, we kick off another action that then will set that data in our state. So you probably already see where I'm going with this. Now that we have this action being kicked off and eventually we'll see this set character world action, we need to create a reducer that can process it. So first of all, inside index.js, we want to import our world reducer. We want to create it down here or add it to our main character reducer. And then we also need to create that file and create that reducer. So we know we want to import from our actions file, we want to import setting the character world. We want to set the initial state, which in this case will be another object. And then we want to export default a function that takes in the state. And we always make the state equal to our initial state up there. And then it also takes in an action. We switch on the action type. We can go ahead and set up our case where we're setting the character world, and we know that we want to pull out the world and we want to return it. And then we also know that our default is always going to be just returning the state that we have. Excellent. So now the data will be obtained. It will then be sent to the store. The store will pass it to all our reducers. The reducers will then set the correct data and pass that back in, and it will be stored in the store as our state. So now that we have all this data being set in our state, let's display it on screen. Let's open up our app.js file here. We're going to create a new row. And inside that row, we're going to bring in our character world component. We need to make sure that we're also importing that character world component. And then we need to make sure we're creating that character world component. We know we need to import React. We also know we need to import our connect function because that's how we will connect this to our store. Let's go ahead and create the character world component. And we know we need to export default connect, and to the second time we call connect, we pass it our character world. Now, of course, you know we're going to have map state to props. We know that that takes in our state, and just like before, we know we want to pull out character, and inside character we want to pull out the world. And we want to make sure that that world is what's getting passed in as props. We also want to make sure that we pass map state to props to there to make sure that it all actually works correctly. And then we want to make sure we're pulling the world out of props to make it easily available to our component. Now again, I'm just going to copy and paste in our component. As you can see, it's very similar to our previous one, to our profile, but we've got a div, and inside that div we've got a little h1 just to say what we're looking for here. And then we've also got code very similar to what we did in profile. Now we've got this isKnown function. You may be saying, well, where is it? Because of how this API works, some of the data that comes back in the world may come back as the string unknown instead of as null or as something falsy. So what it is, I created a simple isKnown function that takes in a text, and it first decides whether the text is there and also decides whether the text is not equal to the literal string of unknown. So as long as the text is there, it's truthy, and it's not equal to the string unknown, then this will evaluate as true, and it will then grab that piece of data and make it look like this, just like we've told it to. Now here's the interesting thing. You may be saying, well, Alex, this is very similar to the last one. We're just doing the same thing over and over, and I agree. But this is the cool thing about keeping our state all in one place. Let's say that as part of the character profile, we also wanted to show what world they live in. Just to put the name, we're not going to put all the same world data, but we are going to put the name of the world that they live in. What we can do is we can go into our character profile again. We'll go ahead and we'll pull in our map state to props. We'll pull the world out. We'll make sure that we're passing that into our component from props. And then we'll make sure that we're pulling that world out just like we are with the profile. Now, because we have this data available to us, say we wanted to add it here. We could add the world's name, check, make sure the name is there. And as long as it is, we add home world and then the world name. That's simple. Since it's all available in one place, we can grab stuff out. As long as we have these kinds of things set up already, we can grab stuff out whenever we want. Okay, so now that we have all this set up, let's go and restart our server. And oh, it looks like I had an issue. Yep, I put default here and this should be function. Okay, we'll restart the server, make sure it picks up all the files that we just created. We'll pull up our DevTools. And we'll make this smaller so we can look at everything at the same time. Look at Redux, and we can see that, look at that, it's getting set current character and set current profile, but it's not getting the world. Yep, and it looks like it's not profile world, it should be profile home world. Excellent. So now that we've done this, we'll refresh page just to make sure we get everything new. Open up Redux. We've set characters, excellent. So let's click on one of them. Look at that. Set character profile, set character world. Notice how all the data has shown here, but it also shows Tatooine right here. If we click on somebody else, we'll click on Obi-Wan. Gets the character, gets the profile, gets the world. And look how it's changed everything. Did everything for us. Let's go to Luke Skywalker. Changes everything for us. Gets everything set up. Everything changes in state accordingly, just the way it's supposed to. So we can see it once again. That didn't change because it's the same one. And look at that. Everything changes. Beautiful. So now that we're doing this, we only have one more to do. It's going to be very similar to the last couple we've done. We're going to get the user's movies. The movies that they were in, we're going to grab those. We're going to display those on screen.